right, I'm here with Kevin Gilbert, and Kevin's going to give us some of his memories and history of his involvement in Orange. And Kevin, why don't we start with how you got started in Orange?
Well, how did I get started? I was in the service, and my mother and father bought a home, brand new home in Orange. We lived in West Haven. So when I come home from the service, I had to give the taxi cab driver my address. I didn't know where the hell I lived.
Oh my,
So that's how I got to Orange.
literally. Oh.
I lived here until I got married, and I went to work in West Haven. I worked there for a couple of years, and the fellow I worked with said to me, why don't we go into business for ourselves? And so we opened up an auto parts store in the Herman's Army and Navy store on the Post Road, back around 1960, I guess. And that's how I started.
Great. And you were definitely part of this town. I think
Well,
there weren't any other auto parts stores that I recall on the Post Road.
No, it was something new and different, yeah.
And you got to know all the people in town for sure.
Yeah, you know, in those days, the Post Road was quite small. It was loaded with truckers, truck stops, truck terminals and diners. And there wasn't a heck of a lot more than that available on the Post Road. It was a very small road
Interesting.
when I started.
That's interesting because we were just speaking with Bob Heise and talking about how Mr. Peterson, we used to call him O. Peterson, but Carl Peterson basically was the first one who set up a scale because these trucks
Sure.
were coming in overweight.
Yep.
And really put Orange on the map for that. And so here you're talking about how the Post Road was just really trucks, and
Yep.
interesting. Oh
Sure.
my gosh, good. Now, Kevin, you got very involved in the town too, which I think is admirable. You gave a lot of hours and still are. Can you tell us about some of your many hats that you wore?
One of my customers at my store was Ralph Capicilatro. And Ralph, I guess, was a little bit involved with politics and running the town and what have you. And he used to get me on committees. And I'd always say, how much time is involved? And he said, it doesn't take any time. Just get on committee. So I guess the first committee I get on was the Memorial Day Parade Committee. And I stayed on that for 40 years. And then years ago, the town had nothing but septic systems. And there was a time that I recall, Bill Hill and Sons, Tom Hill at the time, and his brother Bill, they were emptying out all these septic systems and the places on the Post Road. And one day, he would dump the waste into West Haven in their system. I guess West Haven had a problem, and they stopped him from dumping the waste in there. And in doing so, Sears, who was the biggest thing on the Post Road, was told that if they couldn't get rid of their waste over the weekends and holidays, that they would have to close down. Same thing with McDonald's. So Brendan Toohey at that time was the first selectman, so he called a bunch of people, and I happened to be the head of the Chamber of Commerce, I guess, at the time. So based on that, the courts decided that we had to install sewers in the town of Orange. So, and also, I guess the federal government said that they had to change from a sewer authority to a water pollution control authority. And this was throughout the country, I guess. So Ralph asked me to be on that committee. And I chaired that committee for 19 years. But the biggest thing was that we built the sewers in Orange, which was the biggest project that the town of Orange went through at the time. It was the biggest money we ever borrowed to do it. But what brought to the town was industry and expansion and what have you that we see today. We went from a little small Route 1 to a very large 4 or 5 lane highway today. We were also able to put sewers up into Marshall Road, Prindle Hill Road, and that expanded. So that was probably the biggest thing that ever happened to our town once we got sewers in. And I was involved with that.
That is admirable, because that was a huge job.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it continues, as you say, continues to bring in development to the town, which I think is
They just
fantastic.
It just couldn't have happened.
Wow.
What you see up on Marsh Hill Road and Prindle Hill Road couldn't have happened without sewers. Septics just couldn't do it.
Interesting. Yeah, and interesting to hear that the courts really had to get involved and get this started, and
Yep.
Orange picked it up and said, "We'll do it."
Yep.
Awesome. Very good.
Yep.
So you also said you were doing another committee there too. Was the board of what was the other committee you were on? You did the sewers. Were you on the development?
No.
I missed that. All right. So
Well, I'm not on committees, but I volunteer with the Fireman's Carnival and
Yeah.
Country Fair. Other than that,
absolutely. And you've been doing that for a few years?
yeah, yeah, I guess.
You have one of those open contracts that we don't have an exit clause.
One time I was in my store, and I had about 3 or 4 people in the store, and I needed to get a part for somebody, and the part was downstairs. So I left everybody there, and I was all by myself, and went downstairs, got the part, came upstairs, and nobody was in the store. They were all across the street, and there was an accident at Herman's, Army Navy store, and it happened to be a fatality. But all the people in my store were over there helping that accident. And most of the people were firemen. And I realized, I guess at that time, that people volunteer, especially the fire department was all volunteer. Nobody got paid, but everybody just dove in and helped. And I'm sitting there in my store watching them. And I guess that's really what got me off my fanny to do some volunteering, at least help what I could. So
That's a good.
I just followed the leader, if you will.
Good for you. No, but I think volunteering as we look at it, it's changed a lot, and unfortunately, I don't see a lot of people raising their hand too often to volunteer. But I think you know how important it is, and the satisfaction that you get in helping other people, and not looking for a reward, a check, or whatnot, but just pitching in.
I guess there's a selfish portion of it. I had property, I was paying taxes and everything, but none of the tax money went to support the fire department that was responding to all these things. And I had a police and fire scanner in my store, and I used to listen to the people getting up at 2 in the morning and 5 in the morning to fight fires and what have you, and I realized that I wasn't paying a cent, but I was benefiting from that.
Nice.
And I guess that motivated me too.
Very good.
But I was doing what a lot of other people were doing.
Well, but every little bit and every person does help when you
Yeah.
put them all together.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and we did talk about you being the tractor man, and you even gave me a story and said that some little boy came up to you and asked you at one point and said, "Are you the man that rides the tractor?" So you did that at the country fair and also at the carnival.
Right.
Yeah? And that you did it for many years.
I went into one of my customers when I had my business was Knight's Power Equipment. Frank Knight, the father, who happened to be the fire chief, was the owner of the business. And I went in there and I was selling them fan belts and a bunch of other things. And Frank one day said to me, "Are you going to work the carnival?" I said, "What carnival? What are you talking about?" I had no idea that the firemen had a carnival. And he said, "We're having a carnival this weekend. Why don't you come over and help us do something?" I said, "When do you want me?" And that's when I started. In those days was right the carnival was back in Mary L. Tracy.
That's right.
And I've been helping them ever since, sell soda, water, and then we expanded from that, helping that to the carts, the soda carts.
Awesome.
A lot of work, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, but I'm going to tell you, the satisfaction when it's all over with is certainly well worth the effort. And I had a group of people that worked with me each and every year, and I just call them up and say, it's time to go to work, and we just went to work.
It almost wasn't work. Do you agree?
No, it wasn't work.
Yeah, it was
No,
getting to
it
be
was-
with your friends,
it was-
and you're on your feet a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it really was, it was something I think everybody looks forward to.
Yeah.
I know in my family, the country fair cannot be touched. Third weekend in September, everybody, fairgrounds.
Talking about country fair, there's a meeting tonight.
Oh,
I'll be
good,
at.
and you'll be there. Good, good. Well, good.
Obviously, I'm not as active as I used to be,
But your wisdom is still being used in
I'm
many
still
ways.
nosy.
Oh, excellent. Do you have anything else that you can, any silly stories or memories or something from
No,
Orange?
You know, looking back, we as a town, you know, I was born in West Haven. I grew up in West Haven. But I spent my adult life in Orange. And I kind of adopted Orange. It's the greatest town there is. And by the way, when I closed my business, I started selling real estate. And one of the best things in selling real estate in Orange were the school systems and the closeness to Yale and Yale New Haven Hospital. So people wanted to move to Orange because of the town, because of the way it was run, the school system, and so forth. So, and I was proud to show houses in Orange.
Nice.
But
Nice.
yeah,
Good, good. Well, I do think it's a good town. I agree with you.
well, you were born here.
Yeah, well.
You have a little history that I don't have.
But it's a good town. I was lucky that I got born in a good town.
You know, it's all luck, I guess. Sure.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, I'm so. When I had to sell my house, when my wife passed away, one of the most important things for me was to stay in town. And as everybody knows, it's not easy to financially to stay in town today. And there aren't very many places that exist like where I'm living today. But I'm happy as hell to still live here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What kept you in Orange?
What kept me in Orange? You know what? It's hard to say, but probably the people. It's always the people, I think. The vocation to everything. We have everything in Orange within minutes. Great shopping on the Post Road, great restaurants on the Post Road. I'm a little, I don't know what the words are, but we happen to have the best highway department, the best fire department, the best police department, the best government there is around. It's that simple. The school system, unfortunately, I never went to school. However, I had nieces and nephews that enjoyed the school system. But the school system is second to none. What isn't to like?